Welcome everyone to the second episode of AFLW Inside Out. We've officially made it through the first week. I'm Laura Spurway, he's Meg McDonald. Welcome back, Meg.
Happy to be here again and looking forward to round one kicking off a huge weekend.
But before that, we've got a very special guest, our first podcast guest. We're very grateful for your time. It is the former AFL CEO and the man who, of course, launched the AFLW, now CEO of Tabcorp, Gillon McLachlan. Welcome.
Hey Laura, hi Meg, thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming here. Look, we thought about you when we started this podcast and we were like, who do we want to get on straight off the bat? And I thought of you purely because the AFLW launched under your tenure as CEO. It was a very big undertaking. It still is. But if we go back to the start of it and your decision to have a professional women's league, what are your memories of how difficult or easy that was to get over the line?
Well, it happened fast. If you go back, the sort of part of my pitch to be the AFL CEO, sort of the presentation and that I'd put together was that as I look forward, one of the big levers of growth was that we had to speak to women and half the market as legitimately as we spoke to men. And that was the line I used, that we actually have to have a more legitimate, authentic, deep relationship with half the population if we want to grow. So it was a very sort of commercial thing. Beyond it's the right thing to do, there was a sort of a growth imperative in all of that. And then there's the sort of my personal journey with that backdrop of being the father of three daughters and seeing the world a bit differently to being the brother of three men. And so the sort of combination of the two of how are we going to grow with the sort of the female cohort, and then this doesn't feel right. And it was a talent pathway through our game development, and there was these games emerged, which was Melbourne v Bulldogs, to the best 40 women playing, and I was going to the games, and then they were at the MCG, and they were first couple I saw, as I recall, and then we played a game at Marvel under lights, and it was a slightly smaller field. The conditions were perfect, best 40 women playing, and it was an unbelievable game. And it was hopefully a very good decision, but a sort of moment of poor protocol, and I just got up and announced at the speech
it was happening.
We're going to do a women's league. And it was I got myself in a bit of trouble for all of that, but it was something like that without a business case, no plan, nothing had gone to the commission.
No commission approval, is that correct?
No commission. We just got up and sort of did it. Now, obviously, then that backfilled on all of that, but I had a very supportive board, and they were less, we're not doing this. It was more, what are you doing without the proper process? But it was something that happened, and then we got going. And we might talk about the detail of that, but it was because there was no planning and no business plan. There was a lot of backfilling about what it would look like, and there was, it was an amazing journey. There was, made some good decisions about bringing in some women who had no experience with football to make decisions around the brand. I can tell you the colour palette is coral. I had presentations on the third wave of feminism, and we're trying to understand how do we appeal to a wider audience beyond football and grow. So there's a lot of amazing sort of stuff going on with all of that, lots of decisions to be made.
I think if we look back now on that first season, you've got a season where, was it 27, we'll say, 1,000 at the first game. You've got an average of over 6,000 attending every game, 15 at the grand final. Everyone plays, everyone once. By all measures that we look at now, a huge success. You spoke about participation and also the right thing to do. What were your sort of KPIs? If you're backfilling, reasoning, what were your KPIs for the first season?
We didn't use... it's a complete greenfield startup, so they were pretty limited. What we wanted to do was develop the game clearly, and to do that you've got to get some stuff right. You've got to develop, you've got to talk to women legitimately. You need brands and profile players, and Mo Hope emerged and others. You you need it to look like a success. And so there was a sort of making sure we could, all the contingencies, so we scheduled it at the smallest venues possible, because it's a bizarre thing. You can have 20,000 people at Marvel and it looks less of a success than 5,000 people at Arden Street that looks full. So so that opening game, Meg, you were talking about, that was originally scheduled down at whatever it was called, the Olympic Park, or the Holden Centre, or I think it was back then. And, with free entry, no ticketing, it was like first game, Carlton Collingwood, surely we'll get 3,000 or 4,000 people and it'll look tight and we'll shoot it tight and it'll look great. And so, but you had no metrics because we weren't selling tickets. So you didn't know what the ticket sales were or how we were going. So then, 10 days out, I remember a guy called Josh Vanderler, who was sort of running a lot of the operation, saying it feels like, given social media presence and all the different things, it's not going to be big enough. Yeah. So we made the decision to move it to Icon, and whatever it's called now, it's probably not even called Icon.
It is actually.
Still
is
Icon.
it still Icon?
Yeah.
It is.
Still home in the grand final,
And then
et cetera,
that amazing day, where people were coming, and then they were coming because we were so nervous, wanting the thing to be full and to be a success, and you had no idea. And then suddenly you're not allowed to talk about the head of integrity at the moment because there's integrity podcasts, and but Tony Keane came and said, we're full, we're going to have to close it. And it's like, no, keep the gates open. And then 5 minutes later he goes, we're shutting it, it's a problem. And then I walk out and there's people climbing over the fence, and it was surreal and it was amazing, and it was just a magic moment. And I think in the history of the VFL, AFL, it was just a really seminal period.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've spoken a little bit about Josh there. You mentioned Minor Hope, who you're rightly credited, and that image of you at the front of that game is so important, and you've brought the competition into existence. But who do you point to sort of behind the scenes or in the previous 10 years that you feel is really fundamental to that moment happening?
Well, I did use the line somewhere that wasn't mine. It was given to me. It was an overnight success, 100 years in the making. And there's just so many women just been at it for decades. I mean, Debbie Lee is an example, and others. And then there was men who were championing the cause, who was not popular. And Josh was one of those, and different people in the football department. Grant Williams was very supportive. Dave Matthews is a guy who's not instinctively, you'd think he was behind the scenes very big on development of talent pathways for women. There was a group of men, and there was a huge cohort of women over decades who had just been chipping away, and it just, this thing was there, the demand was there, and the appetite for women to be deeply committed and involved in the game the same way as men was sitting there, just needed someone to open the door. And since then there's just been lots of people who've done amazing work.
So how do we look at it now then? Because I think those early scenes of the success, and you smashed all the metrics, and you can't argue with the interest and the demand, but I think it's something that is still kind of a monkey on the back of the AFLW, like these metrics that we speak about now, and how to maintain them and how to improve them. And we're now 11 seasons in. So in your opinion, how is the health of it now, and what are the challenges to keeping up those metrics?
There's a couple of things. And maybe they're separate points. One is how do we grow AFLW, and what are the opportunities or the challenges? And let me park that and I'll come back to it. To deal with the metrics piece, this is a startup.
I just feel like people have not a lot of patience.
It's not a lot of patience, but they also, the trouble now is it gets compared to the men.
Yeah,
and it's not a fair comparison. It's a competition 10 years old. The AFL is 150 something years old. It's got talent pathways are only fully being filled, and we'll come about what we could do to improve that. But the reality is it's been a huge success on the numbers if you look at it more holistically. Since AFLW came in 2017, every men's season, except for COVID, has broken the male attendance record. Community football clubs are strong because girls and women are playing there, and they're more rounded, and they've got volunteers again, and they've got players, and as they engage the community. So you look at if you look at the health of football in the men's competition and in community football, AFLW has been the influence to bring them back into root health. It is every single year since AFLW started, the men's season has broken the record. And that is in part because the inspiration of AFLW and the legitimacy for girls and women to play football, for my three daughters, means they go to the football, they play football, they watch football, they are engaged. Whether it's right or wrong, they choose to be, they engage in playing women's football, and then their engagement is mostly through the men's competition. Now, I don't know whether that's right or wrong. It is what it is. But what they are is they're watching and following football. And they can sit there and watch football in the same way as my son does and know everything about what's going on. They are involved in a football club. They train 2 or 3 times a week. They play club and school football. They know about football. They go to football clubs. They know how to interact with their community. They know how to make a contribution. They're on committees. My oldest daughter is in the canteen at the Melbourne University Football Club. She gets everything that I got and my son got out of being involved in football and a community football club. And then that flows through the economics at the top line. My daughters will go with 10 girls to watch St Kilda play. They'll go off on their own the same way it's historically been boys going off. So first of all, when you look at the business case of AFLW, give it the context of time and then look holistically, not just directly, and look at all the strategic benefits for the league. And then the business case looks completely different. The amount of girls and women playing and the cost per acquisition, the amount of people going, it looks cheap when you look at the money being spent on AFLW. Fine. The second part, I know I'm conscious I'm talking a lot. I think the challenge, and Meg and I had a lot of debates over this when she was on the Players Association. You're a delegate for Geelong, as I recall.
a delegate.
Diplomatic debates.
I feel part of the challenge is that too quickly the AFLW, and I think wrongly, has tried to look like the men's competition instead of being its own competition with its, with its charms and differences, and with the benefit of 140 years of history of the AFL competition. What would you have changed at the start, and how do we get those settings right? And the rush to be full-time and the rush for all of those different things. There was a huge contest about that. And I think, we, the AFL, had strong views that looked like they were being mean-spirited or cheap or whatever it looked like, trying to slow the length of the season to protect it, to nurture it, to just like playing small venues, keep the season tight, to keep the interest up, to keep the ratings up, to keep the metrics high, manage the pay sustainably so women still had training, skills, careers in the way that we wish the men did, so they can transition out of the game well. And all of that was a bit of a debate, and I think that has played out into the way the AFLW is positioned. Instead of celebrating the uniqueness of women's football, because it is different to men's, and there is a whole series of reasons why I think it's different. I think we've sort of buried them in a desire to look like the men's competition as fast as we can, and I think that's the debate's in that.
I think a lot of that debate, if we go to the sort of player experience and the spaces we've shared together, whether it's captains meeting with the commission or those CBA negotiations, they do become about sort of workplace conditions and that sort of thing. But I did twofold. This question's twofold. How did you go about managing or cooperating with a cohort of players that is, I'm sure, completely different to the men's cohort of players, very engaged in the development of the comp, and having come from places where they paid to play, where it wasn't cool to play, and yet they've created this now wonderful competition as much as anyone else?
Yeah, they were difficult conversations because you're running headlong into the ambition of the players to be where they wanted to go as fast as they could get there.
Yeah,
you were running into, hopefully, this. You said respectfully, there is a bigger force around equity and equality and the ideals of that we're playing through, which are absolutely worthy and the right ideals. But it's like I had my own learnings about, as I wanted to get gender equity in terms of and diversity of the AFL. I over-promoted. I went too fast in promoting certain women, and it was set us back because if they weren't right and ready and it wasn't at the right speed. So, the AFL, or certainly when I left, the the workplace is 48% women, 52 men, pretty close to equal, but it was 22% 10 years before. But the first couple of years I rushed at it and set ourselves back, and I had that experience and that learnings. So those conversations were difficult because the motivations of the female cohort are very real. That it's like, this is important that we get to be the same as the men as fast as we can, and I want my career here to be, and I want to get there fast. But I had my own views, obviously, because you're in those meetings, about getting there at the right speed so it's sustainable and strong and ready for the next. Each stage you're ready for the next stage of the growth, and so we both got our views, and that's how these things play, and then you end up in a position.
I think that tension still exists though, because we still speak to the players as we did on Captain's Day, saying they want more games, they want to play everyone once. Like there's still that appetite for more, but I'm just
so I mean I don't know. I think the CBA is still running that I did when in my last year.
Still, we've got a year to go after this
and
one.
so the big contest more than pay is around how many games, and that will. I'm sure this is going to go on for a long time until you have everyone playing each other once, but. And the irony is the men want to play less.
Yeah, I sort of got to a point where I started to think about what would feel more fulfilling, playing everyone once. I think this is still an open question, or playing in front of 10,000 people every week or for 12 games.
And where have you got to on that?
I think for me, playing in front of, as the Australia-Ireland game on the weekend, if you had that for 12 weeks of the year, that would feel unbelievable. But I was staunch in thinking that playing everyone once contributed to the feeling of legitimacy, or the inverted commas integrity
Is that when you were
of the
playing,
competition.
you had those feelings?
Yes, but I also
Laura,
think.
are you aware of how staunch Meg can put a position?
Yep.
Well, but I think the way I've come
With good intentions.
100% with all the right intentions. Meg was Meg in those rooms was formidable.
That's generous. But I think what I've come away in thinking about is my sense in those rooms sometimes was that the ways that the players advocated for their conditions, perhaps, there was a sense that we were shooting ourselves in the foot, that is read publicly as a constant negative narrative. Is that how you felt in the way that we spoke about it sometimes?
Yes, I did. I felt that the very personal view is someone who, You're interviewing me, so I'm talking about my perspective. There was a huge team of people invested, involved. I just, as someone who made, ultimately was the recommended decision or made the decision or whatever, we were very invested.
Yes.
So I found it challenging to say, we feel we've made a lot of decisions to get here. Well, we're invested with you together. We're all equally invested in going where you want to go. We just feel we've got a lot of experience in running these competitions and growing things that weren't being heard. So, and then there was but we want to go here fast. So there was in the end, it's hard. I feel there was decisions made that were compromised, and I felt also, I think at the margin, Meg, there's like, everyone wants to succeed, and there was a shooting ourselves in the foot a bit too into the narrative of that it lost its innocence and its charm, which had supported it at the start, and it got all hard edged. And we want these things, and I was killing me that was the narrative going out there, because that has got its own dampener. It's self-destructive. It is because the core of and the beauty of our game is it's so Australian, and people don't like that tone, and you could see the numbers drop off, I thought, through that period, and it's hard to talk about that when the women are arguing for what they want for all the right reasons.
Yeah. One more on that subject before I let Laura take us towards expansion.
No, you guys go at it.
No. I'm really interested then, with the AFL making decisions, how much you then thought there was the responsibility of the clubs, which in reality is the workplace for the players and what they feel every day, and how distinct it was from one club to the next. You mentioned Dave, and GWS, I think, had a great reputation for how their players felt, and I think there was something in the fact that they were a relatively new club themselves. But how much do you put on the clubs back then and now to make the players feel valued, supported, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera?
I can't talk for now. I'm 3 years out, and I don't know what it's like now. I've stepped away. What I do know back then is the player experience, and you know this, Meg, was very determined by the senior leadership of the club and the coaches of the men's teams and the football managers about how legitimately invested they were. So women had different experiences, and that was a challenge, because when you're launching something that is new and foreign and a lot of people don't believe in it, that plays out in the workplace, and that was a big issue. I know, and you'll bring that to light. And I mean, I think I'm right in saying 13 teams bid for initial licences. In that is definitionally a thing that there's a lot of people didn't believe in it, that 5 clubs didn't even bother bidding. Now, all that changed dramatically, and then it was like, oh, you're discriminating because we don't have a licence. So it looked different, 2 or 3. Yeah, it's complex, but you know that when clubs aren't bidding, then there's a tail of clubs who are there reluctantly or not invested. So the people who really did it well at the start, Melbourne and the Bulldogs and others, because they were there driving it, and they had champions within the club, and there was others who were less so. But that's the journey. I think that's just how it is. I think we all expected that, everyone tried to do their best to deal with that. I mean, the bid that's not known, Collingwood got one of the inaugural licences. They weren't going to bid, and Eddie overruled the whole lot. I know Ed gets lots of talk about Ed, but he was very strong about that and said we're bidding, and so there was champions from different parts of the business, including presidents.
If I think about you and the comments that I hear, there's broad general comments I hear about you in relation to the AFLW. The first one is it'll be part of your legacy as the AFL CEO, and the second one is Gil expanded too quickly.
Well, I'm not going to. That's for others to judge the first part. 100%, the decision to expand quickly is on me, and that's why maybe we're at odds with what you said before, where I was trying to slow season expansion and other stuff down. I did believe you had to, as quickly as you can, lay the foundations for every club to have a team, and for the opportunity then for women in those regions, for the brand of the club, and all of those different things. See, part of it is the only way you get to a conclusion it's the wrong decision is if you judge the success of AFLW based on the standard of the football on the field and the depth of talent, because the argument is that there wasn't a depth of talent to sustain it. Yep. And that's what I think when I go back, thinking you're already looking at marketing the game and selling the game the wrong way. Because ultimately, if you want to look at the standard of the game, what are you comparing it to? It's a different product. Women playing football is a different game to men playing football, no matter how skilled the players are. They're different athletes. And so for me, the argument that we don't have the talent depth there, it's compared to what? If a standard's, 8 out of 10, depending on your metrics, with 14 teams, and it goes to 6 or 7 out of 10 at 18 teams, so what? The talent will come. There'll be opportunities there. There's more opportunities for the developing players, and it was more telling the story of women's football and the differences. And for me, one of the beauties of it was when it was in its early years was the unpredictability of the game. The men's game is so controlled and so predictable and so rigid because of the high skill levels. The unpredictability was telling those. I think that's my view, whether it's right or wrong, is that you start getting in a conversation comparing it to the men's when you say, if you expand it too fast because the standard isn't good enough, and we want to get the standard. I don't agree with it.
So I think the things that's frustrating for me as someone who watches a lot of football and is invested in the competition going well is the feedback that you still get often from male football supporters that, no one watches AFLW, just those statements. No one watches AFLW, the skills aren't good enough, the standard's not good enough. And I try to say, you know what, it is only 11 seasons in. We are only just starting to get the first draft crops that have actually played this game from a young enough age to build up to a different skills level as to maybe when you entered the competition, Meg. Do you think that women's footy gets the respect that it deserves?
Well, I think women's football does. I can only give my 3 years out of the game my own views. If you go to my local football club, and if you go now in the amateurs, which is where I see it, I don't speak to my old crusty mates and fathers and others. Everyone looks at women's football at their club and at school and junior levels as legitimately as the men's. I don't hear one comment or anyone, and even a lot of mothers were opposed to their daughters playing. I don't see any parent now who doesn't see football as a legitimate pathway as netball or basketball or whatever it is for their daughter. It's absolutely as legitimate. It's whatever percentage of maybe a third of all junior participants are girls and women. And so I believe women's football has 100% the respect of the whole community. I do not hear anything, and I'm at community football for 5 or 6 games a weekend.
Does that extend to the professional?
No.
level,
So then, does AFLW as a professional code get the respect it deserves? It's a legitimate question. I look at it and go, it's just an incredibly important part of the football landscape. Now, what does respect look like? But when you start comparing it to, and this is where I think the opportunity is, when you start saying, is it as skilled or as the men's? No, it's not. But there's lots of reasons for that. Or if you say, is it the same as the men's? No, it's not, because it's women playing, not men, and they're different. And if you said, do I think the AFLW is a seriously legitimate professional sporting competition? 100%. I just think that all the context of 11 seasons in and all the different things are relevant.
Yeah. I don't want to let this moment pass by without saying that I think expansion was absolutely the right decision. I agree. You have to get everyone in. Is that a retrospective perspective? Possibly. I have to go back and check my notes.
No, you didn't want to expand.
There you go. Me individually, or me players in that room?
The cohort. Yeah. I don't remember the individual views.
Yeah.
Because this is...
I think I was in an interesting position where I was in those rooms with some players who had been the best of the best throughout their entire career, and they were driving the standard. And I still think as it expanded, I don't think you could say it didn't improve year on year at the top, like the best of the best.
Part of it is you get always... Those who've then made it, there is a lens about, okay, what's best for me?
Yes.
And it's slightly provocative, but it's like, so you're dealing with a player group who were there then and wanted to play the best standard of football and didn't want every year wanted to be playing better football and more investment resources, which is legitimate. But our responsibility was bigger. And then it was like, it's the flip side of the coin is you're getting more opportunities for women to play, more opportunities for women to be part-time athletes, more opportunities.
What are you grinning about?
I'm just smiling as to what my personal opinions were at the time, because I also have a career because of expansion.
Yep,
So, but true. I was aware that that yes, you're exactly right, that those, you want to get better and better and better, but there's a reality of what happens when you need to deepen that talent pool. But to the other point you were making about community footy, the thing that used to frustrate me was that people would suggest that it's comment on the worthiness of the competition or watching the competition because of the inverted commas standard. And I'm like, you go and watch your under 10s play and you're really invested in that. It's not about, loving sport and supporting it and barracking on the sidelines is rarely about that's a beautiful kick and I only ever watch it for that.
And it's the tribalism. That's why we want 18 clubs to mobilise their supporter bases to follow their team, and it's their women's team. And it's like in the old days they had an under-19s team and you were supportive of that even though the standard was different to the seniors or the reserves. Yeah. It's trying to compare everything's futile. It's the tribal nature of it. It's fathers and mothers and daughters, and it's all of the best of it rather than boxing it to say, well, it's not the same as the men's.
What role do the clubs have in the health of this competition? Because so frequently criticism is directed at the AFL for anything that's sort of not going well, right? But there's a role that the clubs have to play in the success of this competition too. So how much do you think they've contributed to the vision that you had?
Well, I think the clubs are everything. I mean, the AFL all can do is controls the framework. The stars of the show, for AFLW and men's competition, are the players. That's just a fact. It's the brand of the club and the tribalism and that, and the connection with the club represented through its players on the field. And so they are the most important thing. The clubs and the players are what people follow, not the league and not the rules and everything. Everything gets sheeted back home. So I think the broad thing is the club's done an unbelievable job. Now they've got there quicker and earlier and slower and later, and then there's been arcs and things, and then people, because individuals matter. So then if you don't have a champion within the club, and if you don't have someone who takes the full agenda seriously, then you'll have, so at any one point in time, and I wouldn't know right now, but you'll have clubs who are doing it really well, and you'll have clubs who are doing it much less well. And that'll be down to the clearly culture led by the individuals running in the key spots at the time. But what I do know is there is, hundreds of jobs for women and a pathway for them to be professional athletes, and they are representing proud clubs, some younger than, some older than others, and it's a journey. And it's like, today could be better than it was. Today could be better than it is, but it's a hell of a lot better than it was 5 years ago, and it'll be a lot better again in 5 years' time. And the responsibility of everyone in position at clubs and at the AFL now is to lean in and go, well, how do we make this thing better for football and for women in football?
You got to spend money.
You spend money.
The thing is, people talk about, AFLW losing money, and the AFL's response is, no, we're investing money. The business as a whole is healthy because of, as you mentioned, what women are contributing to.
That's what I believe
metrics.
Fundamentally. It's like, first of all, I think we've got to, I know they're talking about that. It's like AFLW is a success. The broadcast rights outcomes are in part due to AFLW, because women, as much as they're following AFLW, are certainly following in droves the men's competition and going. The numbers are there. And there's a complete binary inflection when it starts from 2017 and look at those numbers. So we've got to stop having to justify its existence and lean into that. And when you have this conversation, when I do, people go, okay, I didn't understand that. And so communicating on a large scale is difficult. You can't win everyone over one by one. But I think, there's certainly from my mind, there's no defensiveness. It's just something that is fundamentally changed the landscape of football. My kids play, my daughter played in the Herald Sun Shield final, semi-final 2 days ago. Meg's coaching Caulfield, and they've missed the Herald Sun Shield final, first time in a long time. But the Brown Footy Club, it's every mother and every father and every son and every daughter of every family in the community. Not everyone, but it's not just the boys and the fathers. It's all the family there, and every footy club looks different now, and that's because of AFLW.
I'll save my right of reply on the school footy front for the end of the episode.
Has anyone beaten you this year?
Yes.
Carey?
No, we beat Carey. We lost to both Geelong teams, if that says anything. And we've got college in the granny tomorrow morning. But we'll get back to that.
Are you winning?
Yeah.
They'll win.
Yes. I can deliver my pre-game speech down the barrel. No, the plan is to win, yes.
You got the number one draft pick.
Yep, that should
Purportedly, that's we won't put that on her.
She's very good.
She's very good. When we talk about young people playing the game and taking it up and broadcast agreements and all that sort of stuff, I'm interested in what you think the current, if we want to use the word sort of threat to participation or viewership is NRLW is doing incredibly well. You've still got legacies of, not only legacies, but netball's an unbelievable sport for women and always has been in this country. But then you look at behaviours in terms of audience generally, and you've got streaming, completely different things that are a threat to attention. What do you think is a challenge for the competition, W and more broadly?
Does the NRLW thing annoy you? Just the constant comparisons that the AFL gets to how well the NRLW is going?
Why not have both?
Again, it's just my perspective, and I'm yesterday's guy, so it's all from 3 years ago. But I think the we never used to look at really what anyone else was doing, and maybe some people that sounded arrogant. You're aware of what other people are doing, but if you believe in your every part of your DNA and that we are the custodians of the greatest game in the world, then everything is about actually being the best version of yourself, and it's not what others are doing. And if you got the product right, the brand right, the accessibility right, the venues right, the broadcast access right, if you got all the settings right, you had the integrity of the competition right, you had equal clubs that could all compete, you got the funding right, if you got all the metrics right and let the game shine and the tribalism of the community, yeah, it is, but you have moments when you know it's right and you go, you know when you see it, when every club's competing or the games, like you have to go to task on it. Say in the men's comp, there is all the settings that today it's like Steve Hocking made all those rule changes, meant the game's flying. 13 years ago, we did all the equalisation so all the teams could compete financially and put caps on stuff so that people couldn't be outspent. We've been investing in facilities for 20 years. The AFL has 25 years, 30 years, and they've got some of the best facilities in the world. Investment pathways, accessible and affordable. The pricing is capped. You can get to the games. So all of the settings are there. We've just got to make sure the settings are right for the women's game. And I'm not commenting whether they are or they aren't, but it's just actually going to work every day on all the levers that make a sporting competition great. And if that's the job of the administrators, the clubs and the league working hand in hand to provide the best product for the market, and given my confidence in the game, if we do that, then everything will work out after that.
I think what you've spoken to there and what we've spoken to today is the history of the last 10 years is that inherent tension, I think, between what has been more recently than in men's, for women, a sport and a space and a community where you can show up and be yourself, try hard to get better at something and have that sense of community, with words that have become introduced and are really important to the business of sport, like product, marketing, brand, and how do we bring those two together, because they're both reasons for the competition. But everyone plays footy for the first thing, but then the competition depends on the viability of the other things. And how do you bring those two things to become one?
Well, it's an art, not a science.
Yeah.
And there's no you'll have your views like we did around the CBA, and everyone will have their views. And I'm now just a subjective view. I'm just one voice. I had a much bigger voice 3 years ago, but it's having the right people around the tables and the right diverse set of views. So whatever the answer is, it feels like it's well considered, good process, and then you've got to come behind it. And so I don't know what the issues of the day for AFLW. I'm not making a comment. I'm just answering a question to say, as you look into AFLW and what the decisions are from here, you don't look externally for me. You look at what the market's looking for, but you look at our game because it's the best in the country and how we can make it better.
We can talk about this all day, but we're going to have to wind up soon. As a subjective person, though, and this is a very simplistic way of asking, but if you looked at the competition at the moment, what stands out to you? What are they getting right and what are they getting wrong? Come on, Gil.
No. No. I've done, hopefully, I'm just an opinion. And
that's why I want to know your opinion, because you're an informed opinion as well.
Less informed than I was. Hopefully I've done an okay job of never commenting any way of what decisions are made by the current guys, because I'm just a view. But I think, I think everything's going well generally. If I would say a view about the AFLW competition, which I think we've covered, about right or wrong or whatever, I think the pipeline and the aspiration is fantastic. I think the league is doing a great job at motivating and providing an opportunity for young girls and women to play, and if they want to, then go and have a career in it. I think the opportunity for the brand, the product that we're talking about is it's just different. And can we get the earthiness and the charm rather than trying to be in the game and keep it, and that lovely balance that have between aspiration and opportunity and just that incredible joy in the first seasons. And, rather than, it's not all business, it's still just sport. And there's an innocence and a charm and a connection that was so intimate in those early years. And I think that's something that can continue to be harnessed.
To transition us from the conversation about this perhaps into the big couple of games on the weekend, I think throughout AFLW's existence and before that as well, I'm a great believer, and I think we've witnessed the league and the competition's power to influence societal change. How do you view the game's responsibility in that respect? Is it about reflecting society, or is it about leading society? Is it both?
Well, there's an acknowledgement, which was always in my time there, which was always for debate, but I was sort of unapologetic. Given it's the heartbeat of so many communities, the league, the game represented through the league is ultimately a community leader. Whether people like it or not, the way league is administered and how players represent the game and decisions that are made role model what people are looking for in their communities, I think. Then there is a responsibility. And so there is an inherent thing to say at the footy club and in the community that women have as big a role to play in this game as men. And that is in this, absolutely, because it's the right thing to do, and there is a broader representation through that. It's also a growth thing, and a good thing to do commercially. But it has always been accepted, if you work at the league, that actually the impact of the game and the way it can change the narrative around, say, how boys and girls and men and women treat each other and how one agenda is regarded, it's very real and important. I mean, someone asked me once, what's this moment that stands out for you in the journey? And was me driving down Orong Road, and there's Orong Romanus Park next door, and I saw kick to kick going on, and there was boys and girls in the packs, and I was like, that's progress. And that, get a bit emotional thing, but they're like, that there was, the girls saw no barrier to them playing with the boys, and the boys saw no reason why the girls wouldn't be playing kick to kick with them. And I see that now at the footy club my kids play at. The boys and the girls play footy together, when everyone's up in the bar having a soft drink after training, and there's all the parents there and all the families in there, and the kids, the boys and the girls, are kicking together. And that's fundamental change. And I know that has a generational consequence. And I feel the game understands that, and it's inherent in all the decisions that have been made.
I'll just ask quickly about Spud's game, because we could talk all day. Spud's game this weekend came in when you were CEO. It's still going. We've got the double header this weekend where we've got both the women's game first and then the men's, which I think is a great initiative. You've got the people out there going, why do we have a men's game at 7 o'clock on a Sunday?
7:20.
And
given the game the way it's landed,
yeah,
great game.
It's going to be full house, I think.
Full house.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, I'll be there.
You'll be going. Meg, what do you reckon, Spud's game? Any predictions? If we get a quick tip from you.
I still think Carlton. I think Sophie McKay's a big out. Keely Sherrard's out as well. But they played some scintillating footy last year. And I know the Saints made finals as well. They're coming. But I think the Blues will get it done, possibly in both.
Gil?
I didn't know Sophie was out.
Yeah,
she's my neighbour.
Yeah, Soph's out. Calf.
Carlton, yes. I've got Abby and Sophie McKay are neighbours, and I'm not going to tip against them, even if Soph's not playing.
Or their dad. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. He's
Gil,
a scary man.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it, and I'm glad you're doing something like this, and it's important.
Thank you, everyone, for being a part of the Inside Out conversation. We'll be back on Monday with more of a season preview, but
yes,
tune in, watch us on YouTube, get us where you get your podcasts. It's been great chatting to you again. Thanks again, Gil.
Sorry we went so long.